You really don't care none?
About what?
Every no-count nigger on this place is snickering and laughing at you. They saying Janelva teased you into horsing into bed with her, helping her and Luther to trick Mr. Holland so's the two of them be able to skip off. Was you horsing into bed with her, is that so?
Could be.
You think she pretty?
Oh, I expect she pretty enough, but me, I likes a different kind of face.
What kind?
Kind of face you got, Bill. That Mandinka face.
Mandinka?
Ah.
What fool stuff's that you talking about? That's African. I ain't no African.
Well, I'm Mandinka. We're proud people.
And I'm American. I'm American. I'm American. I was born here. My mammy and my daddy was born here. And my daddy's daddy. And I ain't no African.
Hillary Clinton's goal was to inflict pain on the African American community, she could not have done a better job. It's a disgrace. Look, what do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose?
As Senator Graham made his presentation, the president interrupted him several times with questions, and in the course of his comment, said things which were hate-filled, vile, and racist. I use those words advisedly. I understand how powerful they are, but I cannot believe that in the history of the White House, in that Oval Office, any president has ever spoken the words that I personally heard our president speak yesterday. You've seen the comments in the press. I have not read one of them that's inaccurate. To no surprise, the president started tweeting this morning denying that he used those words. It is not true. He said these hate-filled things, and he said them repeatedly. When the question was raised about Haitians, for example, we have a group that have temporary protected status in the United States because they were the victims of crises and disasters and political upheaval. The largest group's El Salvadoran, the second is Honduran, and the third is Haitian. And when I mentioned that fact to him, he said, Haitians? Do we need more Haitians? And then he went on when we started to describe the immigration from Africa that was being protected in this bipartisan measure. That's when he used these vile and vulgar comments, calling the nations they come from shitholes. The exact word used by the president, not just once, but repeatedly. That was the nature of this conversation. When it came to the issue of, quote, chain migration, I said to the president, do you realize how painful that term is to so many people? African Americans believe that they migrated to America in chains. African Americans believe that they migrated to America in chains. African Americans believe that they migrated to America in chains. And when you speak about chain migration, it hurts them personally. And he said, oh, that's a good line.
Nigga, still nigga.
When may I expect an interview? Presently, Mr. Herrick. Presently.
What would the noontime be without the classic Leave It to Beulah? Beulah, who's always in the kitchen,
But never seems to know what's cooking.
weekdays at noon.
Do you know someone of questionable racial identity? A neighbor? Someone at work? Contact the Office of Racial Identity at 1-800-555-PASS. You might be eligible for a cash reward.
That's right.
passing.
Can you stand it, boss? Can you take, oh, them microscopic shiners gleaming your teeth is? Go on now. That's it. All right. Now that's the power of Ducky. Ducky.
For a shine that's jigaboo bright.
Viola, honey, I just saw your sled. I just saw your sled. I just saw your sled. Running off down the street. Hurry, call the police.
No problem.
No problem? Well, aren't you afraid he'll get away?
Heavens, no. Not with the shackle.
Introducing the shackle, the revolutionary new way of servant monitoring. Just place the shackle around his or her wrist, and when your property strays from your designated area, in minutes, the authorities have your chattel in custody. The secret? Inside the shackle is a space-age computer monitoring chip, allowing the police to track your slippery buck on radar. In no time, he's back home in his cabin. Made of lightweight aluminum alloys, the shackle won't weight your uncle down like old-fashioned chains. And it's tough. The shackle will stand up to the most strenuous of escape attempts. It's unbreakable. It comes in a variety of sizes, perfect for children, and at the low, low price of $49.95. Why wait? Step into the 21st century. Get the shackle.
Aren't you going to stay for coffee?
Can't. Gotta get the shackle.
Have your credit card ready or send $49.95 check or money order to the shackle. The shackle keeps them in line every time. Operators are standing by.
Down home.
At the Coon Chicken Inn, we aim to please. The best 100% mammy-made family-style meals. You can taste the love.
I like the white meat. I'm a breast man.
We just love it here. You'll just keep hollering, gal, fetch me some more. Look for that wide-mouthed coon near you.
Coon Chicken Inn.
Hello, my name is LaShawn, and I will be your tour guide for the Native American art exhibit. The rules are as follows. Pay attention, because I only say things once, so don't be talking while I'm talking. Better yet, just don't say nothing. Now, we will get started as soon as the rest of us get here.
I'm so sorry. I was just admiring that beautiful piece of work back there. Did you realize that the Cherokee Indians never even...
Look, I'm sure you came here with a wealth of information to share with us today. But if you don't mind, your trip to Little Bighorn is not on my schedule. Can we move right along? This was done in 1894 by the artist Running Feather.
You know, actually, I'm very well acquainted with her work. She didn't pick up a paintbrush until she was 57 years old.
I could be wrong, but last time I checked, I was working alone. Now, if you feel that you can enrich the lives of this tour group so much, you could just go back downstairs and fill out an application. Okay, can we please move on?
Whoa, what's this?
Are you blind? It's a bow and arrow. Excuse me? Did you see a sign that said you gonna take some pictures?
Well, I was just taking...
Just answer the question.
I was just taking pictures for my wife. Me and my wife, you know, we met at a museum.
Oh, that is beautiful and romantic. And I'm sure that Chuck Woolery would be very touched to hear your story. But since we don't care about you or your wife, do you care to join us on the tour? No, you don't come in here with that. Does this look like your home? Do you see rats and roaches and an eviction sign somewhere? I didn't think so. Come in here like Buffy and Jody at a project.
There you go. I'm so sorry. They're usually very well-behaved children. They're just a little mischievous, like their mom.
Well, that is so heartwarming that it makes me want to run out and get pregnant and go through 9 hours of labor just so I can know what you're talking about. But if your little angels are so well-behaved, why come they running around here like they're at a special at Kmart or something?
Oh, my God. Come on, children. Let's get out of here. I don't even want you around somebody with such a funky attitude.
Oh, no, because I will snatch you and them kids.
Hey, can we get on with this?
Excuse me, but for your information, my name is not Hay. If you can read, the name tag says LaShawn. If you have a problem with that, see my supervisor. And if you're looking for some hay, I suggest you go check the stable.
Look at this artwork. The texture is just so lifelike.
Wow, it's amazing how they make this in such detail.
And just what are you doing?
Oh, I'm just trying to get a better feel of the texture. This is an incredible piece of work.
Well, that's cool and everything. I'm sure that scientists from all over the world are just dying to come over here and do research on your incredible sense of touch. But as far as our policy goes here, nice to look at, nice to hold. If you break it, consider it sold. Now, on the next part of the tour, you're going to be seeing some Hope in Native American art, basic pottery, everyday hunting tools, religious artifacts, all from sacred burial grounds that are approximately 400 years old.
Wow.
That's great. I can't wait to see that.
Me neither.
Well, you're going to have to because it's time for my lunch break. And if you care to wait, I'll be back in 35 minutes. And if not, have a nice day.
I'm standing in the Pre-Columbian galleries in the Metropolitan Museum of Art with Sarah Shear, an expert in the ancient Moche culture. This is a culture that existed in what is now Peru that produced some of the most exceptional gold work and ceramics that have been found in the Americas.
They were absolute masters at creating both ceramic and metal objects. Their metallurgy was incredibly sophisticated. We see the use of hammering, soldering. What we're looking at here are ear flares that use turquoise, sodalite, spondylus shell, gold, and mother of pearl to create this incredibly beautiful object.
And in fact, we're surrounded by cases with exceptional gold work and other examples of ear spools. Now, if this was 25 years ago, I would probably have to explain what an ear spool was. But I think most people now know that these are basically studs for a piercing in the ear that is much larger than a typical piercing.
And the idea was that the bigger the ear spool, the more important of a person you were, and vice versa. And so these particular ones have a diameter that's about 1.5 centimeters, which is pretty hefty.
But to make it much more extreme, the display side is much larger and must be quite heavy because not only do we have a significant amount of gold, but we also have inlaid stone.
They are very heavy, and they would have been counterbalanced partially by the fact that the shaft in the back is so long. It is also possible that most of these were somehow fastened to headdresses or otherwise attached to clothing to help take some of the weight off of the ear itself, which would have been exceptionally stretched out by these objects.
So it's safe to say this was not for everyday wear. This was probably for ceremonial use, but we do find wear marks on these kinds of objects, so we do have an indication that these were not only used for burial.
These do seem to have been worn in life. The question is whether they were worn by one generation or possibly multiple generations. It is quite possible that if you are a very high-ranking person with lots of responsibilities, you may end up wearing these quite a bit more than you might think.
The image in the center is extraordinary. We see these two bird men, and they seem to be running so fast, they seem to have almost picked themselves off the ground.
This is something that we see very frequently in Moche iconography, this image of the running figure, whether human or supernatural, and it's done by having those two bent legs at the knee and the arms in runner position sort of pumping back and forth. And then we of course have with these figures the wings on their backs that seem to add to that sense of swiftness.
And faces that show beaks and eyes that are made in gold but are clearly the faces of birds. Whether or not they're masks or these are representations of mythological figures is unclear. You can make out that the headpiece is tied on under the chin.
Yes, that's very common in Moche art, is that the building blocks of these headdresses are actually shown and that you can see how they're fastened onto heads. Now, it's quite true that we don't really know whether these are meant to be representations of mythological creatures who wear the same kinds of hats that people wear, or that they are meant to be representations of humans who are wearing masks as ritual runners. Either way, the iconography of running while holding this bag in one hand, and that's what that very simplified shape is. It's a bag that's gathered up with the top pieces sticking out at the top of the hand. This is something that we see a lot in Moche iconography.
And one of the ideas that may explain those bags, here represented in mother of pearl, is that they may be representing leather bags that could hold something precious like beans, almost like the sort of typical American egg and spoon race. The idea might be to travel over long distances without dropping any of those beans.
That is one theory, that it was possible that it was a test essentially of masculinity and of physical ability to be able to run a long foot race over difficult terrain like that found on the coast of Peru.
Peking ist nicht mehr zu toppen. Es ist zu toppen durch den Mann hier.
And that one would be able to do this while still guarding something precious and delicate.
But these are also warrior figures, and it might not be immediately apparent, but the legs are representations not of socks and tight-fitting leggings, but rather body paint.
And we know that mostly because of ceramic representations that are a little bit more detailed. The bottom parts of the legs are represented in sodalite, which is a purplish blue mineral, and then we can see at the knees there are these darker patches of turquoise. What we tend to see in the ceramic pieces is that those areas of sodalite and then the patches at the knee are all rendered in one color of slip, and they are very much represented with warrior figures. That is, figures that are dressed not just with the kilt and the back flap that we can see being worn by this figure here, but that also have helmets, that are carrying shields and maces, and are sometimes fully engaged in combat with each other.
So we shouldn't be thinking about the idea of a race as pure sport. This has a clear military aspect to it.
There's something symbolic about it. Now, we can't give you a blueprint and say this is exactly how this fits into their entire system of belief, but what we have are a series of visual associations that we have found by very closely looking at the artwork, and that these elements, the leg paint, the kilt, the back flap, those are things that are associated with warriors, and that there are other things that are not immediately apparent as being war-related that seem to have something to do with what makes a good warrior, including images of men hunting deer.
This is so important to keep in mind because our understanding of Moche culture is really evolving. This is not a culture where we have a written record. This is not a culture that we fully understand. And so it is objects like this that are allowing us to gently begin to construct an understanding of what this culture was about.
It's a blending of an understanding of these pieces, but also everything that's being done archaeologically. The Moche are a really great example of archaeology as science. We are seeing people revising old hypotheses, putting forth new ones, using new technology, and turning that into a much more sophisticated understanding of how people lived.
So we can take that process and look at these ear flares and begin to understand a little bit more about these people. For example, the shell that makes up the kilt and that makes up the cuffs comes from the west coast of Ecuador, at some distance from where the Moche lived. The turquoise and the sodalite is coming from a distant place, and so we see evidence of trade routes, and perhaps we see evidence of a kind of dominance of the Moche to be able to require the importation of this kind of material.
It certainly is a representation of the ability of the elites of the Moche, at the very least, to command the results of these trade routes, to have things that they could trade in exchange for these things, but also to command the manpower to bring these materials together and to create these objects that represent the status of the people at the top of the social hierarchy.
Standing even here now in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the status of the individual that wore these is very clear.
Absolutely.
What? Ghost dog. Ghost dog? He said ghost dog. Yeah, he calls himself ghost dog. I don't know, a lot of these black guys today, these gangster type guys, they all got names like that they make up for themselves.
Is that true? Sure. He means like the rappers. You know, the rappers, they all got names like that. Snoop Doggy Dogg, Ice Cube, Q-Tip, Method Man. My favorite was always Flavor Flav from Public Enemy. He got the funky, fresh, fly flavor. Live lyrics in the bank of reality. I kick the flies dope, maneuver technicality. Do a dope track. I love that guy.
I don't know anything about that. But it makes me think about Indians. You know, they got names like Red Cloud, Crazy Horse, Running Bear, Black Elk.
That kind of shit.
Yeah, Indians, niggers, same thing.
My relationship with Pruitt-Igoe was that of a research assistant. I went to Washington University to graduate school in 1964. I was working on a National Institute of Mental Health funded study on social problems in public housing. My role was to study women and girls in Pruitt-Igoe. I was 20 years old. I had just gotten out of college. Some of the girls were 18 years old, and I was 2 years older, but yet my life was vastly different. As time passed, I did wonder, would my life have been similar to that of the girls had my parents migrated from Mississippi to St. Louis? Would my opportunities have been different? I guess to put it bluntly, I never saw the people in Pruitt-Igoe as that different from the lives of poor people I had grown up with in Mississippi, except for one thing: the strong, tightly knit communities and families in which I grew up had begun to shatter around the people who were displaced in a northern city with few supports. And the policy and the housing authority was to move the poorest of the poor, the most dependent families, to Pruitt-Igoe.
Before we moved into Pruitt-Igoe, the welfare department came to our home. They talked with my mother about moving into the housing project, but the stipulation was that my father could not be with us. They would put us into the housing project only if he left the state. My mother and father discussed it, and they decided that it was best for the 12 children for the father to leave the home. And that's how we got into the projects.
The welfare department had a rule that no able-bodied man could be in the house if a woman received aid for dependent children. If a man lost his job, he's looking for work, he still had to leave the home. And there was even a night staff of men who worked for the welfare department whose job was to go to the homes of the welfare recipients, and they searched to find if there was a man in the home. Sometimes men came back at night to be with their families. Some were found in the closet hiding.
I remember vividly my mother telling us, if white people come to the house and ask you guys questions, tell them that your father is not here. Tell them that your father has never been here. You have not seen your father. I trusted her. I knew that there was a reason that we had to do this charade, and I participated in the charade. I sat there and looked those people in the eye and told them with pure earnestness that no, I have not seen my father, and no, my daddy does not live here. And but I knew that I was lying, and that made me wonder, who are these people and how do they have the power to make my mother lie?
We're giving you money. We want to be able to control you. We're giving you money, so we have the right to make stipulations as to how you use it and what you use it for. There were so many restrictions. We couldn't have a telephone. We couldn't have a television. And we were really left at the mercy of the system.
In the project, it seemed to be strategically planned to create an environment that people felt isolated, that people felt restricted, that people felt, inhuman almost. You're bad, we have to restrain you, we have to curtail what you're doing. It was void of humanity. It was void of caring. It seemed more like a prison environment that you'd have to escape from.
They were treated in some ways like they were prisoners. If we are going to support you and to give you a few measly dollars to live on, then we're going to extract blood from you. You're going to live according to the rules we set. And the rules just happen to be very punitive. There was this whole undertone of morality, that they had poor morality, that they were immoral by virtue of the lifestyles they led. Poverty never created immorality. Poverty created want.
When we first moved in the projects, we couldn't have a television.
Here it is.
And then my mother got a letter that we could have TV.
Barbie's dream house is a wish come true for both of you. And look.
I was always interested in the family programs. Programs with fathers. My Little Margie, where the father was so involved with his daughter.
Margie!
Come on in, Dad.
Margie, you know I've always tried to be both mother and father to you.
You've been wonderful, Dad.
Do you remember that little game we always play when you have a problem that you can't tell your father?
But I haven't got any problems.
Now come, tell me what's wrong.
When I looked at those sitcoms, I just felt like this is the way white people lived. Because black people, from my experience, did not live that way. And I never questioned, I never wondered why. I just figured this is how it is.
We have our home here, and if the colored move in and run real estate values down, it's bound to create tension. And you will have, well, I think their aim is mixed marriages and becoming equal with the whites.
Well, I just could not live beside them. I don't feel that they should be oppressed. But I moved here. One of the main reasons was because it was a white community. And that's the only place I intend to live.
Welcome to Family Court. I would like to welcome everyone out to Family Court today. I am the Honorable Judge Roy Bean. I will be presiding over the destruction of your family. That's why we call it Family Court. The course of your trial will be very lengthy. These proceedings will not be a trial in the manner that you might expect. These cases will be conducted on a kangaroo court basis. During the upcoming months, I will be violating your rights left and right. So go ahead and get used to it now. I prefer for you to be as compliant as possible with all of my directives. You will have no choice because I will have plenty of backup. The police or sheriff's deputies are here to do all of my bidding. By the way, the cops will also provide backup for everything the CPS or DSS agents tell you. That's why they call them law enforcement. Actually, that is a misnomer because they will not actually be enforcing the law. They will be enforcing my orders. In reality, they will be violating the law as part and parcel of our family court racket. But that is just an aside, so do not quote me on that. In fact, do not mention or reveal to anyone what takes place during these proceedings. I am placing a gag order on you. I am ordering you not to reveal anything of my skullduggery or that of the CPS or DSS workers. If you violate my order, I will have the cops put you in jail. They will gleefully do my bidding at all times. They are the enforcers in this very large criminal enterprise. I will also have complete judicial backup in the event you have the audacity to appeal any of my decisions. The judges over me will condone everything that I do. We are all in it together, so to speak. Money is a great motivator, and we are all after it. These proceedings, as I mentioned, will be quite lengthy. It will be so by design for two purposes primarily. Our aim in general is to extract as much money as possible from you for the benefit of myself and my fellow actors. Also, by dragging it out, it will help you to become accustomed to not having your children. Eventually, I will terminate your parental rights. We call it TPR. Although all of our proceedings will be conducted on a kangaroo court basis, do not even begin to think of it as a Mickey Mouse operation. Our very well-constructed racket garners for us hundreds of billions of dollars. This money is taken from the Social Security Trust Fund, so we will get the money, and this is big-time business. Unbeknownst to you, the attorney you have hired will be colluding with myself and the CPS or DSS workers. That is what makes our operation so smooth. Just to give you a friendly heads up on what to expect, you in all likelihood will become a pauper. You will spend all of your money trying to get your kids back, which will be an exercise in futility. You will not have a chance. It is kind of like the old arrangement of throwing a Christian to the lions. As we conduct our business, do not mention constitutionality, as that has no place in my courtroom, and I will tell you that in a heartbeat. Your so-called constitutional rights will be violated with regularity. As you have already noticed, I will be violating your First Amendment rights, the so-called freedom of speech. As I mentioned, there will be no jury trials, so your Seventh Amendment rights under the Constitution of the United States will equally be ignored and violated. Even if you request or demand a jury trial, I will deny that to you. That has already been arranged by design. Also, there will be no adherence to due process. You will not be allowed to defend yourself or prove your innocence. If I were to allow that, it would be crystal clear from the cold record that we have no case to stand on against you. So that will not happen. If you fail to comply with any of my court orders and fall behind on paying us the money that I order you to pay, I will also violate the constitutional prohibition against debtor's prison. I will put you in debtor's prison in a heartbeat. The coming months or years, as it may become, will be very stressful for you. Just to give you a friendly heads up, some of you your moms, dads, and your children will commit suicide. I do not encourage that, but I realize that frequently happens. Let me make it perfectly clear. We are not meaning to take your life. We just want to take all of your money. So that completes your orientation. Have a nice day. All rise and let the trial begin.
Good evening and welcome to For the People. In 1920, historian Carter G. Woodson said, quote, "One of the longest unwritten chapters in the history of the United States is that treating of the relations of the Negroes and the Indians," end quote. How and under what conditions did Native Americans and Africans come in contact with each other? How much intermarrying took place between the two groups? How did white supremacy shape those relations? That great libertarian Thomas Jefferson said of the Native Americans, quote, "We would never stop pursuing them with war while one remained on the face of the earth," end quote. How close did Jefferson and other Europeans come to realizing this objective? We'll explore these and other questions with Dr. Jack Forbes, author of Black Africans and Native Americans, Color, Race, and Caste in the Evolution of Red-Black Peoples, 1400s to 1865. Dr. Forbes is professor of anthropology and Native American studies at the University of California at Davis. He is co-founder of DQ University, a Native American university located in Northern California.
Well, I think the main point is to fill in a gap that has developed because of the suppression of knowledge of the interaction of black people and Native American people. In other words, it's to tell the story to the fullest extent possible of the interrelations between these two ethnic groups with both extremely rich heritages of culture and history.
Where were the Native American population during the time that you studied?
Well, during that time period, I think virtually all areas of the Americas and all of the islands virtually, including up to Greenland for the most part, were occupied by different native people. So the entire continent and virtually all of the islands were occupied. The Spanish writer Bartolomé de las Casas, who is the principal author of, that gives us the information from Columbus's diaries. Columbus chose to finance the conquest of the West Indies by selling Native American slaves. And he characterized it as his granjeria, or granary. In other words, it was the granary that was going to pay for the conquest, that is, Native American bodies. And Columbus himself sent at least 3,000 and possibly as many as 6,000 or more Native American slaves to Europe. This begins as early as 1493. On his return voyage, he takes about 24 Native Americans to Portugal and Spain. In the subsequent voyages, many, many more are sent, men and women. Now, he intends to sell them by the thousands, not only in Spain, but he mentions the Azores, the Canary Islands, the Cape Verde Islands off, the west coast of Africa. The Cape Verde Islands off, the west coast of Africa. The Cape Verde Islands off, the west coast of Africa. As well as in Portugal and Spain and elsewhere. So even before there are any appreciable number of African slaves being sent to the Americas, there are Native American slaves being sent to Europe, principally probably ending up in Lisbon and Seville, or Sevilla in southern Spain. So even before there are any appreciable number of African slaves being sent to the Americas, there are Native American slaves being sent to Europe, principally probably ending up in Lisbon and Seville, or Sevilla in southern Spain. So even before there are any appreciable number of African slaves being sent to the Americas, there are Native American slaves being sent to Europe, principally probably ending up in Lisbon and Seville, or Sevilla in southern Spain.
Now, when people think of American slavery, they don't think of the enslavement of Native Americans. Why is this?
Well, partly because the enslavement of Native Americans occurred first. The enslavement of Native Americans occurred first. The enslavement of Native Americans occurred first. And enslavement was...
Say that again, please. Say that again.
The enslavement of Native Americans really began before the enslavement of Africans. Not only in the Caribbean by the Spanish, where it was extremely extensive. In the Caribbean, I might mention that the numbers were huge that were involved, and they had several kinds of slaves. They had the normal slave, but they also had people who were called, well, they were called Indians from the useless islands. They were from islands where there was no gold. And so they had the right to go and remove people from those islands.
The useless islands?
Yeah,
What
well, Jamaica, for example, would be a useless island because it had no gold. Inutiles, not useful. And they needed labor so badly on Haiti, where the gold was found, Haiti, and Cuba, that they were stealing people constantly and removing them by force from other islands, even after it was no longer technically in the best or possible, legally even, to enslave. They still could remove them as forced free labor. We could call it later coolie labor, right? And then they had other categories of unfree Indians as well. But once the population declined on the islands themselves, they began raiding the north coast of Venezuela and Colombia very extensively, also part of Panama. They also came up here and cleaned out the Bahamas completely. All the Lucayo people.
What period are we talking about now?
Well, we're into the 1440s, 1540s, 1560s. Many people from Florida, South Carolina is raided for slaves, and also the west coast of Mexico in the 1530s. Many Mexican Indians are sold as slaves, and it extends on into a much later period of time. But in short, the tremendous numbers of Native Americans were enslaved, and the Spaniards kept looking farther and farther afield for slaves to replenish the labor supply.
With the enslavement of Native Americans and Africans by Europeans came a maze of racial and caste designations. In this segment, we learned that the term Negro didn't apply just to Africans, but to Native Americans as well.
Well, the Portuguese particularly begin using the term Negro or black for a wide variety of people other than people from Africa. They apply the term very commonly to the native people of India and to other areas of Southeast Asia. But when they arrive in Brazil, they also use the term for the native people of Brazil. They call the Indians of Brazil Negros da Terra, which means natives of the land. And then later, when they begin bringing people over from Africa, they call them Negros da Guiné, black people from Guinea. This term Negro is just used very commonly, interchangeably with Indio. This term Negro is just used very commonly, interchangeably with Indio. This term Negro is just used very commonly, interchangeably with Indio. So you become, I become convinced that basically what the Portuguese meant by Negro was non-white. In other words, any group of people who were not white would be categorized that way. And that Indians, therefore, were just another kind of non-whites or Negros. In 1719, for instance, the government of South Carolina decreed that all persons who were not full-blood Indians would be classified as Negroes.
I'm so tired of eating dust. I've tried everything and nothing works. Is there anything that can make this car faster?
Try some of this, sport.
Do-Cooter!
Sambo X15 is specially formulated for the way America drives. It blasts and cleans away those stubborn black deposits that rob your engine of power.
It lubricates and protects.
Listen to her purr. Thanks, Duke.
Don't thank me. Thank Sambo X15. It's what the pros use.
Your ancestors never intended to let you down. In this book, called The Gods of Northern Buddhism, we find a name, the Asian name of the supreme deity of the universe. His name is Sambo. They say when nothing else was, Sambo was. The name of the God of the universe to the people of Asia. And there are many places that carry this name. This is a depiction of Sambo. This is not an African statue. This is from Asia. And many places in Asia are called Sambo Judasia, the land of the descendants of Sambo. Various spellings of the word and the name Sambo can be found throughout Asia. Negas, the divine people of Buddhism. This is a 2nd century depiction of Gautama the Buddha being given his first bath by the divine people of Buddhism called Negas, a tribe in Asia called Negas, the divine people of all the people of Asia, symbolized throughout Asia by the serpent or the dragon. That is their symbol. The Nega means serpent or dragon, the snake, found at the entrance of every temple. The Nega on the roads, on the hills, in the caves, the symbol of the Asiatic black man, the tribe called the Negas, the divine people. There are cities also throughout Asia that carries this particular name, Nega. It can be seen at all ceremonies dealing with worship of God. From the Nile Valley to the Indus Valley, on tombstones, a symbol of immortality because of the serpent's ability to change his skin is a sign of never dying, and is used throughout the planet Earth, North, South America, Egypt, Asia, Africa, throughout the world. It's the symbol of life after death, the Nega, the serpent. In all ancient cultures, in all ancient religions, the serpent is the symbol, the Nega, the symbol of divinity, of God. The original inhabitants of Southeast Asia was called the Mons. In order to confirm what these people look like, you have to go to the archaeological finds from Davarati, a French archaeological research finding confirming the original inhabitants. There's no depictions preceding these of the original inhabitants of Southeast Asia, the people, the descendants of Sambo, the Asiatic black man. The 7 serpents, or 7 rays of the Negas surrounding his head, represent the cosmic forces that afford him protection. He is a divine representation of cosmic forces, and those 7 serpents represent his divine mission. He does not come of his own. He's a manifestation of the cosmos. The serpents, or the Nega, represent cosmic forces which is at his command, which represent him as a divinity. He is the manifestation of the universe. That is the symbol of those serpents you see surrounding his head. In essence, the 7 serpents are cosmological, dealing with astrology, astrological representations of those forces of the cosmos that he represents. He is a universal monarch, a universal king, which he manifests and he shows evidence of. The black man of Asia, the original inhabitants of Asia. He is a human being of flesh and blood. He comes as a teacher, as a manifestation of God. His teachings are called the Dhamma. He is called the Buddha, the intelligent one, the one who has achieved intelligence, or the genie, the conqueror. He comes to explain the laws of the universe. He comes to confirm that there is, in fact, life after death. When the Buddha appears, he appears as a preacher, and he preaches the Dhamma, that existence is a continual cycle of death and rebirth, and that each person's position and well-being in life is determined by his or her behavior in their previous lives. For example, good deeds may lead to rebirth as a wise and wealthy person or as a being in heaven, and a person's evil deed could lead to rebirth as a poor and sickly person, or even rebirth in hell. He preaches that you reap what you sow. A Buddha also teaches that it's possible to break out of this cycle and gain a kind of perfect peace and happiness by practicing righteousness. They are manifestations of God. According to their prophecies, they promise to prove and make manifest through a Buddha or a Jina life after death before the end of this century. How can you teach a people to know God if he himself does not know God? If you try teaching a Christian that God is also a human being or manifests himself in the form of a human being or makes himself known through a human being, they will say that you're crazy, that you don't believe in God. Meanwhile, they admit that he's a mystery God who is unknown. They teach not to make any likenesses of him, yet they adorn their walls and churches with pictures, images, statues like human beings. They also say he is a spirit that cannot be seen. They cannot see him, yet they believe in him. In order to remove all doubt, the Buddha, the enlightened one, the intelligent one, the genie, the conqueror, decided to make manifest to the world irrefutable evidence. They wanted to prove to a people in the future the manifestation of God, that God manifests himself through human beings, through men. Now, prophecy is irrefutable. A prophecy is a written confirmation of what will happen at a future date. These people, the black people of Asia, predicted or prophesied what they would do 2,500 years into the future. The prophecy states that he would send something from the past and join it with something from the future, something from the material world and join it with something from the spiritual world. The union of both the past and the future worlds and the spiritual and the material worlds would be contained in the revelation of a secret mystic diagram called the Mandala of two parts. This is a depiction of the future Buddha who would make this manifest at a point before the end of this century. Now, the scriptures of the world have all prophesied at the end of the age, which we are now entering, the age of Aquarius, we shall see the revelation of that which is secret and the emergence into the light of day of that which has hitherto been concealed and veiled. This, our present age, is that time, the end of the cycle, the beginning of the new age. The Japanese badge of nobility is called a mon. The monsoon, the monastery, mani, is identified with the black man of Asia. And the largest statues on the planet Earth located in Asia are depictions of the Buddha, the black man, the Jina. His hair confirms who he is. This is the largest statue in China and the largest statue on Earth. depicting the black man. The oldest and largest manifestations of God, like this image of the Buddha in Thailand and Southeast Asia, are representations. There are no other statues or monuments of antiquity that precede them. They manifest themselves on earth and prove life after death. This from Ceylon or Sri Lanka, showing the Buddha, thousands of years old. They are the largest statues on earth, representing the black people of Asia, or the black man of Asia, the one who comes back from the dead to prove immortality. They do it all the time in all the countries, and they prophesied that they would do it before the end of this century. This is the largest statue in Sri Lanka, the largest statue in China, the largest statue in India, the largest monolithic statue on earth, the genie, the one who comes back from the dead, carved in solid rock 70 feet high. The largest monolithic statue on earth is the black man, and it is not in Africa, but it is in Asia. The Asiatic black man, the manifestation of God who comes back to preach and explain the doctrine of immortality, how to escape the fires of hell. That is his sole purpose. To attack him is to attack the cosmic forces of God. He sits in Western style because he will be born in the West. The people who he will be born among are called the Negroes. This is the future Buddha, the one who is to come,